Hello, Mark Kidd. You are live on our lockdown lesson. Good afternoon.
Oh, how are you doing?
Where are you coming to us from, Mark, today? Because it's very blue sky
I'm
and sunny.
welcome to Sunny Orchard Farm, where I live and grow all my things. It
But
is. We've had
it's
fantastic
sunny.
weather this last.
It's sunny Orchard Farm today. The actual name of the
It
farm
is. It's
is Sunny
properly
Orchard
Sunny
Farm.
Orchard Farm today. Yeah, it's great. It's south facing, so that's one of the reasons I chose this land. Is it gets all the sun in the summertime.
It's beautiful. So I've been lucky enough to come to Sunny Orchard Farm, and so you go up the Kentmere Road just out of Staveley, and it's on the right hand side, isn't it? And it's in the
Yep.
most beautiful spot.
Yep. It is nice around here. I'm very
And
lucky.
who do you live there with, Mark?
I live with Shona, my wife, and three wonderful children who are mostly wonderful.
And you took a decision a few years ago to have a complete change of life and change of pace, didn't you? And so did Shona. Just tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, well, I left university. I had this a standard job, and I had the chance to start a business years ago, and that was like a little garden centre that was up in Silliff, North Cumbria. Ran that for a while, sold that, and then I always wanted to have my own sort of little farm, live the good life, that kind of thing. And after looking around for a long time to find some land, I eventually found some here. Moved on, built a house, had a family, and hopefully living the good life now.
Now, it's not just any old house, is it? Because it's not a standard build house, it's fair to say.
No, it's just sort of a eco hippie straw bale type house with a grass roof, and it's small, but it's warm and it's cheap.
Well, when I came to see you, I had absolutely no clue what to expect because when Shona told me it was built out of bales, I think I expected like a den. But it is actually, on the outside at least, it's a standard house. But you are fairly off grid, aren't you, really?
We do. We've got our electricity's all from solar panels, a little tiny wind turbine. Our water, luckily here we've got a spring up on the hill, and that supplies all our water. Again, that's one of the reasons I picked this land when I moved here. So we don't have any utility bills really. We just pay our council tax, and that's it.
It's just extraordinary. It's amazing. How old are your children, Mark?
We've got 3, 5, and now 7.
Fantastic. And I believe that until recently, or I should really rephrase that, at some point you were homeschooling the kids, is that right?
We did. We homeschooled our eldest for a year and a bit. And then the school at Langdale offered to do us flexi schooling where you send your kids for 3 days a week and 2 days at home. So they've been doing that this last since September. However, due to lockdown, we're now homeschooling again, which is quite nice actually. So
I bet you're pros
yeah.
at it as well. It didn't phase you, I'm sure.
No, it didn't really matter. I think our eldest, she'd like to go back to school. She quite likes the school dinners of all things. But the other two, I think, would quite happily homeschool all the time.
Now, a friend of mine, so I was going to knock my messenger off. A friend of mine, Tracy, who may be watching this, she actually lives down south. She and her husband are addicted to those Ben Fogle programs about,
Okay.
being off grid and life in the wild and all that kind of thing. So when I told her about your lifestyle, she was fascinated because it's not for everybody, and I'm sure it's very, very hard work. But on a day like this and in lockdown, it sounds a little bit idyllic. I'm not going to lie. I'm sure a lot of people want to be Mark and Shona right now. So just explain how you actually earn your living from the land and the farm that you have.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the Ben Fogle programs because being part of being off grid is we don't actually have a TV or not one that's like connected into any sort of aerial dish. But yeah, we have a little farm. It's like an organic farm. We grow various bits and pieces. When I first came here, the main product I grew was salad leaves. You go into the supermarket and you get bags of ready washed, ready picked salad, and they're horribly expensive and horribly they don't last very long. Well, we provided those here. Ours lasted quite a long time, which is one of the selling points. Then it's gradually evolved to slightly more high value products, things like jars of jam, that sort of thing, anything that can be processed and the value added on. So one of our main products now is herbal teas. So rather than sell the herbs as fresh produce. We dry them, put them in a jar or a bag, and sell them for 5 times as much in the sort of tea form. We've also moved on to doing even more things, like, for instance, I've got a plug here. We've been making seed kits.
Wow.
Some of the things we grow in the farm, for instance, one of the things we grow here is wheat, and which you can then process into your own bread. So we've got a very nicely titled "Grow Your Own Bread Kit," which has actually been selling quite well lately, which has been a really good product for us.
Just tell us about how you would get it, how much it is, and what it actually is inside there.
In here is a little book that I've written on how to grow your own wheat, how to process it, how to grind it up, how to thresh it out. All very old-fashioned processes. None of it needs any specialist equipment. You get a little bag of special winter red wheat. You can also sow it in the spring. You can sow it now if you want. And you also get a little stick to measure out, and all the instructions are in there. It's $6.99. You can get it on eBay. You can go on Amazon and pay $5.99, but you've got to pay Amazon's delivery charges, so you're probably better on eBay. Or
we'll make sure we put a link to it, if that's all right, Mark.
Yeah, and we've got a link on our website to those places as well.
Okay.
And it's been really good little product for us because it's small. It can go through the letterbox. Don't have to go to the post office to send them off now or get couriers in. So that's been really good. And also, people must be at home bored or thinking of things to do in their garden, and they're ordering seeds. So that's been really good.
And did you do that as a result of the lockdown, or did you do it? Did you do it accidentally?
No, we started that last year. So it's a way to try and add a bit more value to some of the things we grow here. For instance, you could never make a living selling wheat because it's so cheap. However, selling seeds, specific seeds, there's a lot more profit in that. And that's the sort of way we've been going here, really, from going from fresh produce to more the kind of things you can sell all year round that keep. So that's how our business is going.
It's amazing that you can make a living for a family of 5 in a straw-baled house in one of the most beautiful places in the world from your own land. It's incredible, really. I bet a lot of people find that quite hard to believe.
Yeah, there's a proviso is that you have to kind of live cheap. You're going to make a living, but it's not a huge living. So you've got to, on the other side, bring your costs down. And luckily here we have very little costs. The business is set up in such a way that there's really very little cost. We don't have any staff to pay. We don't have rates to pay, that kind of thing, because it's a farm. There's very little inputs coming in. So yeah, it can be done if you're cheap about it.
So frugal, yeah, not cheap. What have you noticed most, or what impact has lockdown had most on your lives? I'm guessing not very much.
On our lives, not really, particularly. Obviously, we still go to the supermarket for bits and pieces, and we've been trying to avoid that. So we've been digging into our sort of stash of saved foods. And when you sort of grow a lot of your own food at this time of year, you're still kind of eating out of your stores. Strangely enough, even though the sun is shining, there's not a lot of produce ready to eat now. So you're still sort of eating the things you've grown last year. So there's still potatoes and there's still some squash, and there's all your seeds and things that can still be made into food and eaten. So no, not a lot of difference, apart from obviously selling a lot more seed kits.
Yeah, well, there's a good positive. So treat me like I'm stupid about this, because I definitely am. But if I buy potatoes from the supermarket, I am under the impression I've got to eat them within a couple of weeks, right? How does that work?
Yeah, so that's right. So you can get different types of potatoes, but if you grow a main crop potato, you'll harvest that in about August time, maybe September. So you dig them up, you let them cure, you leave them on the ground in the sun for a bit, and they sort of toughen up a bit. And then you put them into cold storage, which basically means you put all the good ones into a sack or into a box in a moist, cool place. Now we've got like a back of a barn, which is nice and cool and kind of moist, and they'll keep till about this time this year. So they keep almost a year, maybe 10 months, that kind of thing. And you can pick them out. I mean, by the time you get to the end, they're starting to go a bit rubbery, but they're still, you can still eat them if you peel them well. But you don't have to eat them within 2 weeks. Potatoes, they're designed to keep. If you think about it, a potato will stay in the ground all through the winter under the ground and keep itself okay until it's ready to grow again the next year. You can do that for other crops as well.
You blow my mind.
Sorry, you can do that for other crops as well, like carrots and swede, that sort of thing.
That's amazing. I had no idea. So actually buying them from the supermarket, keeping them in the wrap and putting them in the bottom of the fridge probably isn't doing them any favors.
Not the fridge. You need ventilation. So if you put them in the fridge, they'll probably go rotten and go a bit horrible and slimy. But if you took them out and say if you put them in a Hessian sack or maybe a terracotta pot with some slightly moist leaves or newspaper, that kind of thing, somewhere cool, they'll keep quite well. And then you go through them every once in a while and take out the rotten ones and throw them away.
Amazing, incredible. I've learned such an important thing already. And I have to ask you though, Mark, how do you know this stuff? How did you and Shona have to learn right from scratch?
I suppose just years of reading books and things. But if you think about it, this is the way a lot of people, say 100 years ago, used to live, especially in the rural areas. They all had root cellars or cold cellars. They all grew some of what they ate. They used old-fashioned techniques just to keep things going. I mean, nowadays everyone has a fridge. We don't have a fridge, but most people have a fridge and they just buy every week at the supermarket.
How can you not have a fridge with 3 kids?
Well, actually, sorry, we do have a fridge, but it's not the sort of fridge you have inside your house, like a white fridge that you open up. It's a pot. It's a terracotta pot, a big one, but it's got a little terracotta pot within it with sand around it, and we wet that sand. And as the water evaporates out of the sand, it cools the inside of the pot, so we can keep certain things nice and cool outside. So we have 3 of those pots now because we have a lot more things for the children. The only thing we don't have is a freezer. So we don't have ice cream, that sort of thing.
You're not missing anything much, really.
Really? We do like ice cream when we go out.
Well, then it's a treat, isn't it? But my freezer's just full of old bread I'll probably never eat, so I don't think you're missing much. But yeah, not having a fridge when you've got 3 kids, or not having a conventional fridge, is a little bit of a mind blown as well. Now, I've seen a lot of my friends who didn't have green fingers before are trying to do, accomplish green fingered tasks now, because everybody's kind of looking to the garden or out in the garden and thinking, actually, I think I might be able to do that. So I want to give everybody a bit of inspiration and a few tips to get them on the right lines. So you're going to share, aren't you, 5 tips to getting into growing your own fruit and veg. And, I think the whole situation that you're in, Mark, is absolutely fascinating to most people. That's the comments that we're getting as well. And I think people are really interested in your life. So at the end, I want you to be able to share, where people can find more about you and read more about you. But let's get into the tips for now, because I could talk to you all day otherwise.
Really? Okay. Tip number 1. Part of the problem with lockdown is that normally when you're a gardener or you want to grow things, you go to B&Q, you go to a DIY place, or you go to the garden centre and you get your seeds or you get your seed potatoes, that kind of thing. But they're all locked now, so they're all closed down, so you can't get seeds, you can't get compost, you can't get any pots. So you have to kind of improvise. So number 1 tip, if you can't get any seeds, you can actually grow some plants from things that you might buy in the supermarket style. For instance, if you want to grow some tomatoes, you can actually take a whole tomato from the supermarket, you cut it and take the seeds out of the tomato and sow them straight into the soil or some potting soil, and you will grow new tomatoes from that.
You can grow.
It might not be the variety. So, yeah, you can. All the seeds within tomato should be viable. The tomato plants you get from it might not necessarily be the ones that you would get from a seed packet. You might not be able to choose. They'll basically look similar to the parent tomato that you've used. So if you use little cherry tomatoes, you'll probably get cherry tomatoes, and if you use a big beefsteak tomato, you'll probably get that again. And it'll be similar. It might not be exactly the same as the parent tomato because of the way plants can crossbreed, that sort of thing. But if you're in a pinch and you want some tomato plants, you can just cut a big tomato up, scoop the seeds out, put it on the soil, and they should, after a week or so of germination time in a warm place, they should come up.
What would you suggest at this time of year? Because I know it has been quite cold some mornings, and tomatoes like the warmth, don't they? Do they need to be inside or outside?
Yeah, So with tomatoes, you've got to start them inside. I mean, hardcore growers, they start their tomatoes in December. And then by this time of year, they're maybe that kind of tall or maybe larger. But it's still not too late. If you've got a warm windowsill, sunny southern-facing windowsill, you can start your tomatoes in a pot, keep them well watered. If they're inside the house at this time of year, they should germinate within a few days, really. And then it's not too late to put them out. But the thing with tomatoes in this country, you really need them in the greenhouse. Some people try growing outdoor tomatoes, but it's just not reliable. Maybe down south you could get away with it in a good year, but up here, unlikely. You'll have to grow them within a greenhouse. Or if you've got a big pot, you could maybe grow them in a conservatory. Or if you've got a big windowsill, you could grow them on there. You can also do the same thing for peppers. If you go into the supermarket and pick a big red pepper, cut it open, it's full of seeds, plant those seeds out, you should get little pepper seeds from it. Again, they might not look like the pepper that you've actually taken them out of, but they'll be, they should be edible. One thing that I've actually struggled with trying to get this year is seed potatoes. Now, normally when you sow potatoes, you don't sow them from a little seed, you sow them from like basically a baby potato, which you buy from the garden centre. You can't buy these in supermarkets. And they're of a specific variety, and you pick them out and you plant them in the ground, and then a potato plant grows up, and then you dig it up later in the year and there's lots of potatoes in the ground. So if you can't get seed potatoes, you can just use an ordinary potato. So if you go into the supermarket and buy a big bag of potatoes and put those in the ground, they will act as seed potatoes. It's not ideal to use them every year, because the idea of using a proper seed potato is that it's disease-free and it's all certified. Whereas if you're just using ordinary potatoes, you might build up disease, but for 1 year, you should get away with it. It should be fine. The thing I've had to do this year, I've had limited seed potatoes because I saved my own. When you take the potato that you're going to plant in the ground, there'll be little eyes on it. When they grow up into shoots, they start to sprout. So you want to keep those sprouts. But say if there's a sprout at either end of the potato, you can just cut it in half, and then you'll have 2 halves. And each of those halves will grow into a full-on potato plant. So that sort of doubles your production, really. And
does a potato plant grow more than one potato on it?
Yes. So when you plant the potato, it will sprout new little leaves, and then what you do is you heap more soil on top of it, and in that soil, little potatoes will form. And every time the potato plant pokes out the top of the soil, you heap more soil on it, and it keeps pushing more potatoes out.
Wow. Amazing.
So yeah, potatoes, they're really popular. So if you go to the supermarket, you probably get a bag of Maris Piper. That's a popular variety. They're quite good. You could grow them quite well in Cumbria. You probably won't have the same sort of selection you'd get if you went in the garden centre and picked all the, chose all the different seed potatoes. But the basic supermarket ones will get you a yield. You can also, if you're desperate for seeds or some sort of plant, you can take celery or lettuce. If you go into the supermarket and buy a celery or a lettuce plant, eat the top bit, the root at the bottom, if you sort of cut that off, but keep the rooted bit, the big, thick, stumpy bit at the bottom. If you place that in some moist soil or compost, again on a sunny windowsill, that will then shoot up new little leaves, and you'll get a new plant.
Wow.
So if you use the bottom of a celery stalk, that hard sort of white bit at the bottom, it'll form new roots and it'll form new shoots. And then it might not form a great big celery stalk like you had originally, but it'll definitely give you the leaves, which you can use in salads and soups, that kind of thing. And the same with lettuce plants.
Wow. Amazing.
So again, if you've got no seeds, and the last thing to do, if you've got no seeds, if you look in your spice rack, you might have something like coriander seeds, that kind of thing. They're whole seeds. If you try some of those in compost, you might just find that some of them are viable, and you might be able to grow those on.
Actually, I have to ask you about that. When you buy herbs from the supermarket, I'm talking about the really cheap ones, like the Asda ones, and they're already in a pot.
They're in a pot, yeah.
Yeah, you think that they're a plant, and then you water them, and then they just die. Why don't they live?
Usually, they've come from a really humid, warm greenhouse, and then they get put in your kitchen, which is dry and often not that bright, and they kind of just, it's a sudden shock to them, and they kind of flop down and fall apart. But with those plants, what you can do is you can take them out of the pot and you can divide them up. So you could, if you take the ball of roots and chop them into, say, quarters, take one for using yourself and then put the others in your greenhouse, or maybe under like an inverted plastic bottle in the garden, so it's like a mini greenhouse. Then you could grow those on, but water them really well if you're going to do that.
So they are
So that's
actually
another thought.
okay for growing, because I thought maybe that somebody told me that they were hydroponic. I don't really know what that means, but and then they would never grow. But actually, what you're saying is because it's just a change of environment that's causing them to get weaker and die.
Usually, it's a bit of a shock coming out of the really controlled environment. Hydroponics means it's growing in water. You don't often see that in the supermarkets. It tends to be in a pot with some soil.
Yeah.
But hydroponic plants will have very clean roots because they've just come out of the water, or sometimes they grow them in like clay bowls, that sort of thing. It's usually we don't do a lot of that in this country. It tends to be Australia, places like that do a lot of hydroponic growing.
Okay. Really interesting.
Every the last one might be interesting. If you've got a bag of popcorn, if you take those popcorns, sow them in the soil, they may just germinate and form little sweet corn type plants. I mean, the plant you get it's going to form like something that looks like a sweet corn, but it's sort of fresh eating sort. But if you let it dry, you can kind of use it as popcorn as well. It's interesting to grow. You might not get much yield off it, and those popcorn plants tend to be from other countries which have long hot summers, so you might not get much off it, but it's definitely something interesting to put in your veg plot if you've got space and you can't get any proper seeds.
Amazing. You actually blow my mind at the moment, Mark. Keep going.
Tip number 2. It's been almost impossible for some people to get compost. Normally people buy all the compost at the time of year. You go to B&Q, you go to Tesco's or wherever, and you just put some in your car and you drive home, you've got a big bag of compost. But now it's well, last time I looked, it's non-essential, so you got frowned on if you were going to buy some compost. So the trick is to try and make some of your own. I've been making compost here for years, and it's got a certain recipe. It's 1 part rotted down part 1 part leaf mold and 1 part just garden soil. The problem is you probably won't have any leaf mold or compost that you've made yourself, so you're going to have to use the soil. If you can find any leaf mold, if you look under any trees that have had leaves dropping down and look at the soil underneath, it's often kind of a bit leafy, a bit friable, nice kind of organic matter. If you've got some of that, if you mix it with your soil, that'll be extra points for the compost. The problem is when you use soil to start your plants in, it's often full of seeds, weed seeds, that kind of thing. And what you'll get is your seed probably won't come up, but loads of little green shoots will come up with all sorts of things in it. So you've really got to sterilize it. So if you get a big tray that you might roast your turkey in at Christmas, or your vegetables, spread your soil, about maybe 1 inch thick in it, put it in your oven, low temperature, about 80 degrees, put it in for about an hour. That should kill all the weed seeds off. What comes out will be really dry. There is a warning that when you put it in your oven, it might smell a bit funny, because soil always smells a bit funny when you heat it up. But it'll be nice and sterile, so then you can use it as your potting compost. You can put your seeds in it, and usually it'll be nice and free of weed seeds, free of sort of fungal spores, that sort of thing. And it won't be as good as the multi-purpose that you get from B&Q, but it will do if you don't have anything else. Tip number 3. If you can't get any plants, you can propagate some of your own plants. So say if you only have 1 tomato plant that you've managed to scrounge from your neighbour, if you let it grow a bit bigger, you can actually take cuttings off it, cut bits of the side shoots that grow out that you normally pinch off. You put that in the soil. A week or 2 later, they'll form roots and you'll have a new plant. And you can keep doing that and form yourself lots of new plants.
You just take a little bit of the plant and put it into the soil. Does any of it have to be sticking out?
Yeah, so it's got to be the right part of the plant. So when you get a tomato plant, it will grow along like a leader. It's called the long main shoot. But where the leaves come off, there's always like a little new bit that forms like a branch.
Yeah.
And let that grow a bit more. Pinch the branch off when it's a decent size, maybe the length of a finger. Put that in the soil, and if it's warm weather, keep it well watered. It should form easily. Tomato plants root really easily, and that'll form your new plant. And that's like virtually a copy of the mother plant. You plant that out. So you're not picking the leaf; you're picking the side shoot, the branch shoot that comes off the plants.
Wow.
So tomato plants root really easily. You can also pick other plants. You can pick them up and divide them. Say if you're growing a lot of flowers and herbs, they're often perennial plants. They grow in like a big clump. You can dig the whole thing up, get a big knife or sharp spade, cut it right in half, stick the original one back in, or half of it back in the original hole, take the other bit and plant it somewhere new. So that's a way of dividing up your own plants. I mean, gardeners divide their plants all the time, but when you're stuck for new plants, you might be dividing and propagating your own a lot more because there's no other source, because all the garden centres are closed. And the last thing is, if you already got a vegetable plot and you're growing again for the next year, you might find that some of your seeds or some of your plants have self-seeded. And if you just don't weed your plot for a little bit, you might find some of your original seeds will come back up. For instance, in my greenhouse, last year, a lot of the tomatoes fell on the ground. They just fell on the ground. And now there's lots of little tomato plants there because all the seeds in the tomatoes have self-seeded, and that's like a free source of tomato seeds. So I haven't weeded them. I'm just going to pick some of those out. Also, if you grow potatoes, when you dig your potatoes up, you'll always find that you miss a few. And those have been sat there over winter, and just about now, they'll be poking up in your soil outside. So rather than just pull them out, throw them in the compost, you could actually pull them out and replant them somewhere. So if you're lacking in seed potatoes. And those plants are called volunteer plants because they volunteer their efforts. So if you ever hear anyone saying volunteers, that's what they are.
They volunteer.
They're like free plants that you kind of forgot about. Tip number 4, make your own fertilizer. We're organic here, so we don't really use fertilizer. We use compost, but a lot of people do use fertilizer because to give the plants a quick boost. And it's useful if you're growing a lot of things in pots because the plant has a restricted root run, so it needs fertilizer adding to it because it can't reach out into the soil to get it from elsewhere. So obviously you can't go to the garden centre, you can't buy your favorite brand of Miracle Grow or whatever it is, but you can make your own fertilizer. What you need is a bucket, and you need to go around and get yourself a load of weeds. So ideally nettles, but it could be anything, dock leaves, whatever. Get a big bunch of those, chuck them in the bucket, add water, let it rot away. It will smell disgusting, it'll look disgusting, it'll be horrible. But if you strain that out, put it in a watering can and water it in, it's actually really good for the plants.
Is it?
So that's, yeah.
Wow.
And some people, not me, actually use their own pee as well for fertilizing.
That was the direction you were going in there, Mark.
Yeah, you have to work out how to get it into the bucket yourself. But I suggest if you did do that, you'd have to water it down 10-to-1 because it can burn plants and that kind of thing.
And not smell very.
So yeah, well, I mean, people do it, especially the sort of your sort of eco hippie permaculture type people, and it is a really good source of nutrients actually. And number 5, top tip number 5, again, if you can't get to the garden centre, you can't really buy your plant pots and your seed trays, and this can be a bit of a hassle. But if you look in your rubbish, you'll probably have lots of plastic bottles and cardboard tubes from the inside of all those toilet rolls you've been stashing. If you take the toilet roll tubes, you can put soil in them or compost and just put them in a little tray, and they will act as little module plants. And the great thing with cardboard is you can just plant it straight in the soil. The cardboard will rot away and the plant will grow happily away. If you're lacking pots, if you take the bottom of a milk bottle, jug, or milk, even those Tetra packs, stick some holes in the bottom, there you've got an instant pot there. You cut it in half. And you don't need to buy the specialist pots from the garden centre. I mean, when the garden centres reopen, you might want to have the pots because they look a bit neater than milk bottles, jugs turned upside down.
Mark, that is just absolutely mind-blowing what you've just said. Honestly, I'm fascinated. I really am. I'm not going to rush out to my little terrace and do anything just yet, but I bet there's a lot of people that have taken a lot of inspiration. Can you just tell us what's behind it? What are all those little white things behind it?
Yeah, okay, in the background here,
yeah,
there's these are glass cloches that I've sort of made myself. You know, when you do if you've ever made like homebrew wine, you get these glass demijohns. They're about 5 litres, a gallon size. Well, I've taken those and I've cut the bottoms off, and I've got a stick here. If you if you can sort of see where I'm pointing, in there's a little plant. And it's just like a mini greenhouse.
Can you take the phone over to one so we can have a look at them? Because
yeah, if the reception stretches.
If it stretches, but if it's really cut off, it's my fault.
Oh, can you see?
Yeah.
Right. There we go. Okay. But right, I use the glass ones because we get quite a lot of wind up here, and if they were plastic, they would just blow over. But you can just take, say, like a fizzy drinks bottle or something like that.
Yeah.
You just cut the bottom off, and as long as the top, don't put the lid on the top, then it creates a little greenhouse, and all the hot air can just escape out of the top.
How amazing!
So that's a little lettuce plant. So it just is a little bit of a warmer environment for it, and it protects it from the wind more than anything, sort of those drying winds. And then in a week or two, I'll just take these off permanently, and the plant can grow itself without protection.
Cut the bottom off, Mark.
Haha, right. I've got you tile your bathroom, you've got a tile cutter.
Yeah.
Like an electric tile cutter. Just one of those.
Really? That's amazing. I think they would.
I've lost a few over the years. But every time I go to a car boot sale, I can always pick one up for maybe 50p or £1.
They're brilliant. What a great idea. So I'm sure lots of people have got lots of questions about your lifestyle and your choices. I suppose I feel that a lot of people have talked, the general consensus is that we're getting back to nature, that there's less pollution, that more quality time, more time with family. And I think that your way of life is very appealing to a lot of people right now, because people aren't consuming as much anymore. They are spending time doing fewer consumable kind of activities. They're not going on holiday. They find things to do in their own gardens and, play with their kids and spending time in the kitchen as a family and all those kind of things that they didn't do before. So I think there is a real shift change at the moment. And your way of life, I think, has never been more appealing to a lot of people. You write a blog, don't you? You and Shona, is that right?
Well, we have done on our website, and sometimes we do Facebook updates and the odd Facebook video, and when we get time.
I need to make an appeal to you to share your lifestyle more with an audience that I think is ready to hear this, because we read and hear about it all over the world, but it's rarely on our doorstep that somebody has made the decisions that you've made and leading what is actually your best life in such a non-invasive way. I think it's incredible what you do. Yeah,
I suppose I've done it so long, it's just normal now. But I could probably give you whole reams of disadvantages, but I think the advantages are definitely outweigh the advantages. Definitely outweigh the disadvantages. I think it's a sort of lifestyle that's quite. That's ultimately, I think it's quite kind of fulfilling. It's one of those lifestyles that makes you feel, I don't know what the word is, like happy or content. So that's the main thing. And when you've got that, it doesn't necessarily matter if you don't get to go, skiing in Italy and things like that every year that everyone else around here seems to do. But
as you get older and they describe their childhood to people, it's going to sound like something out of an Enid Blyton novel.
Yeah. Although sometimes I've noticed that, like farm children, they tend to go the other way, and they start, once they get to 18, they put the high heels on, they're off to the city, and you never see them again. But everyone's different. So.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to know what your kids decide to do. Actually, be fascinating by them.
Yeah, they'll probably be off to the city.
Well, the big city of Kendal. Mark, this has been really, really good stuff. It's been one of our most popular episodes of Lockdown Lessons. I think what you've taught us today has been phenomenal, and not just for lockdown, but actually what you've probably done is inspired a lot of people to maybe rethink what they're doing, how they're living, the impact they're having on their environment, and how to live more simply, how to live without actually spending a load of money and have a very comfortable lifestyle, which I'm sure you have. So I really appreciate your time today. Tell us, what does a Saturday look like in Mark's world?
A normal Saturday or a lockdown Saturday?
Well, I'm assuming they're quite
Actually,
similar.
they're kind of similar. Yeah, they're kind of similar.
What are you going to do
Well,
today?
they get up in the morning. There's often loads and loads of emails. Some of which are eBay, but I do some like things in the community. So there's often lots of things to reply to. So get all that sorted. And then at this time of year, I'm outside, so it's really good. Weeding. I've got like a big greenhouse down there, and there's lots of things in there. It's packed, stuffed full of seeds, and it's just still a bit early to put things out. So in the next week or two, I'll be putting everything outside, and it's going to be quite busy then. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. And before you go, I'll tag the Facebook page and you know the other things that you've got going on. But can you just do us a 360? Because I'm desperate to see what's the other side of the camera, what's around you.
Oh right, okay. Right, what have we got? Okay, we've got. That's me. Can you see a house?
That's the house. It's amazing.
We've got a trampoline this year for the kids.
Oh yeah.
Somebody gave us that for free. That's brilliant. And we've got.
Look at that. Isn't that beautiful?
Things.
That's gorgeous. And that's up to the Kemere Valley, isn't it? How lovely. Oh, it looks gorgeous. And nice on a sunny day like this. Brilliant. Mark, thank you so much for your time today. I'll let you get on with whatever you're going to do today. Make sure you have a good time. I hope you do get a chance to put your feet up at some point today. I know I'm speaking to Shona later on in the week, so I'm looking forward to that. I'll be asking her some questions.
Yes, that's going to be fun.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Yeah, I'm going to be winding her up about that.
You're both going to be famous at this rate. Ben Fogle might be phoning it, you know.
I will have to switch the TV on, catch him on iPlayer or something.
All right. Well, look, have a good day, and thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it.
No
It's been a joy, and have a good day.
Rightio. See you later.